Okay, so we had two shittas about what happens to a bas kohen shezinsa. We had the shita of the Rabbanim, who hold that a bas kohen shezinsa only gets the prescribed misa of sreifa if that's an upgrade, not a downgrade. So a naira hamurasa, who even a bas Yisrael gets skila, we're not going to downgrade a bas kohen to sreifa. So a naira hamurasa, even a bas kohen gets skila, but a nusua, that's mizana, a bas Yisrael would only get chenek, a bas kohen shezinsa gets sreifa. That was the sheet of the Rabbanim. Then we had the Shita of Reb Shimon, who held that no matter what, a bas kohen shezinsa gets sreifa. Are you going to ask me why would she get a downgrade from skila to sreifa if she's a naira hamurasa? Reb Shimon holds sreifa is more chomer. So therefore, saya naira hamurasa, saya nesua. If it's a bas kohen shezinsa, she gets sreifa. And then Rabbi Yishmael had a hybrid shita. Rabbi Yishmael said that we learn from Avia, from Naira Murasa, that the only bas kohen shezinsa that gets sreifa is a Murasa only, but a bas kohen who's a nesua, who's mazana, she gets chenek. Practically, my Rabbi Yishmael. Where is the source of Rabbi Yishmael's halacha? The Tanya we learned. Ubas ish kohen ki seicha liznois. That is the story of a bas kohen. I'm going to position Dr. Rabbi Shmuel. It's only speaking by a naira murasa. Maybe it's even by a nesua as well, like Rabbi Shimon said. No, because it says ish asher yinaf es hs re'eu moish yumas hanoyev hanayafes. There's a general clause that creates the Isser and the Chiv Misa of Chenek for all Noyafim. So all Noyafim, any type of Znus, is going to be covered by the general clause of Isser Asher Yinaf. Hakol Oy B'chlal Noyaf on the office. The Kodesh Baruch Hu made two carve out from this general rule to make two exceptions. Hoitzi Hakos of Bas Yisrael B'skila. The first carve out is a Naira HaMe'urasa, doesn't have the generic chenek, rather she gets skila. And there's also a carve out for a bas kohen. It says a bas kohen kiseicha liznais, a bas kohen misreifa. Therefore, we're going to compare these two exceptions, these two carve outs to one another. Makishoychi hakos of his bas Yisrael l'skila. What type of married woman was it talking about? An arusa v'loy nesua. Af kishoychi hakos of bas kohen l'sreifa. It's referring to the same type of woman that the carve out was for skila. Arusa v'loy nesu. Zoyme meha. What if two Edom come and say a bas kohen was mizana, and they're found out to be zoyme? What do they get? They also get chenek. Uboyala, and so too the man who the bas kohen is mizana with, he gets chenek. Zoyme uboyala b'chlal, they are both included in the rule of asisim loy kasher zom lasois la'ochiv loy la'achois. Correct, Gemara boyala my kasher zom mika. The pasuk of asisim loy kasher zom lasois has nothing to do with the boil. So how could you tell me that the boyala is b'chlal that pasuk? Ella, the boyala gets chenek and not shreifa because it says he tisarif, dafka her and not him. Zoymimea bechlal misas boyala. The Edom Zoymin, they get the same misa that the husband would have gotten. Mishum shenemar vasisim loy kasher zom lasas le'achiv v'loy la'achosoi divi Rabbi Shmuel. Hey, thank you so much. So that is the rule. Rabbi Kiva says, achas harusa v'achas nesua yotzos l'shreifa. Rabbi Kiva is a fourth chita who holds that Saya and Arusa, Saya and Nesua goes l'shreifa, which is exactly what we had from Reb Shimon as well. Yochol afilu pnuya. I might have thought that even A woman who's a pnuya, if she's a bas kohen, normally a pnuya shezinsa doesn't get any misa at all. But you might have thought because of the chaymer of a bas kohen, maybe she gets reifa even if she's a pnuya. And for that we have a limud nemer kan avia v'nemer lahalon avia. This sounds like a gzer shava that we had yesterday. Ma lahalon znus im zikas habal. Just like by inarham urasa, what type of znus was it? It was a znus for a married woman. She was connected to a husband. Afkan znusum zikas habal. So the baskoin that gets reifa, it's only if she was connected to a baal. Rabbi Shmuel. So Rabbi Shmuel said, so if you're making this Gzer Shava, how could you make it part way? Once you're comparing a Baskoin Shazinsa to a Nayam Arasa, you can't just take away from there that she's married. Take more detail from there. Take only if she's a Urasa. Rabbi Shmuel, Imal Allah Nairabu Arusa, Afkan Nairabu Arusa. So therefore, Rabbi Kiva, how could you argue me and say that a Baskoin Shazinsa, even if she's a Nesua, gets Reifa? If you're learning it from a Nayam Arasa, learn it completely. Rabbi Kiva, Yishma Lachi, my dear brother, Bas Ubas Anidorish. It says with a Vav, Ubas Koin Kiseichel Uznois. That Vav is Marba, even a Nesua. My dear brother, yeah, that's right. Maybe you're Italian. Avkan, Narav Yerusha. Amalai Rabbi Kiva, Yishma Lachi, Bas Ubas Anidorish. Amr Lay, so Rabbi Shmuel said, I don't understand. Because you want to make a big deal out of the bas ubas. We're going to take this woman who should really only get chenek, and we're going to give her the misa of shreifa. You can't pick and choose. Im mashma lahavi es hanasua. If you're going to bring a raya and compare a bas kohen shezinsa to a rusa and say that it has to mean she's a married woman to exclude a penuya, heavy as a pnuya. The mashma lahaiti is a pnuya. But if you're going to say that it excludes a pnuya, if it includes an asua, you're not making the comparison to an ayah. So include a pnuya as well. And if you want to say, no, we learned from Arusa that it's not a pnuya, well, then learn from Arusa as well to be haitias and asua, that an asua shouldn't either get shreifa. For Rabbi Kiva says, no, I have a blend. I have two different limudim working together. A hani gzer shava to create a comparison, which will be limute pnuya. The gzer shava tells us learn from an ayah murasa that it does not apply to a pnuya. But hani bas ubas lo avish nesua. Bas ubas limits the scope of what we're learning from Nayam Rasa through the Gzer Shava, and say that we don't learn Nesua from there. Rabbi Shmuel Sovar, Rabbi Shmuel, so it happens to be Rabbi Kiva has a very good argument. So what was Rabbi Shmuel's problem to begin with? Zokt Gemara, because Rabbi Shmuel misunderstood Rabbi Kiva. Mida Amrle Bas Ubas, when Rabbi Kiva told Rabbi Shmuel, my dear brother, I have a limud. Rabbi Shmuel understood that limud tells you not to dan to Gzer Shava at all. Shemamina hadebe migzer shava. Rabbi Shmuel understood that from the Bas Ubas, Rabbi Kiva was learning that he's ignoring the Gzer Shava. So therefore, Rabbi Shmuel said, if you're ignoring the Gzer Shava, so then it shouldn't even apply to a Pnuya. Okay, that is the end of the discussion between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva. So now we learned the third sheet of Rabbi Shmuel, who holds that the Shreifa that the Bas Koyin Shezinsa gets is only if she is an Arusa. Now, Rabbi Shmuel, now let's get an understanding of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel, hi bas ubas my darish be. Rabbi Shmuel sticks to the Gzer Shava completely. So what does he learn from the ubas that Rabbi Kiva used to tell you that it applies even to Nesua? He needed to teach us a limud that Avui de Shmuel bar Avin taught us. You find there's a difference between a kohen tam and a kohen balmum. The obvious difference is that a kohen who's a balmum cannot do avoida, so his kedusha is a little diminished. Yochol nachloik bivnoi said. You might have thought, just like the koyach of the kedusha of a kohen that has a mum is diminished because he can't do avoida, maybe so too the kedusha of a kohen with a mum is diminished, and his daughter doesn't get shreifa like the daughter of a regular kohen. Tamalay bas ubas. the daughter of a kohen, even if the kohen is a mum, she's like any other daughter of any other kohen, and she's mizana, she's going to get straight. Rabbi Kiva, how does Rabbi Kiva know this? Allah, how does he know that a bas kohen, and if the kohen's a balmum, that she gets straight as well? He learned it from me, v'heimim makrivim v'hoyu kodesh, and we darshan even balei mumin are kodesh, as Rashi says. V'hoyu kodesh l'rabbis af balei mumin l'kedusha, they also have kedusha. So Zok Gemara, Rabbi Shmuel, so he also has v'hoyu kodesh. Why did you need to vov? Rabbi Shmuel, imeyachi havamina hanamili inu avu b'nesei maloi. I would have thought, yes, the actual kedusha of the kohen himself is not diminished, even though he has a mum. So therefore, even though he can't do an avodah, but he still can't become tamei. He's treated with a full kedusha of a regular kohen. But who said that kedusha also will go to his daughter to say that his daughter gets reifa? I wouldn't know that. For that, I still need the extra vav, kamash shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel. Now, Rabbi Shmuel, remember, he learned it from a Memetzinu. He just says we're going to compare the carve out of Nair Hamarasa to the carve out of Basish Kohen. He doesn't learn Avia. He doesn't learn any of these limudim. So therefore, he has a lot of extra limudim to deal with. Hi, Es Avia Hi Mechalelas. What do we learn from Es Avia Hi Mechalelas? That if she's mizana with somebody, she's going to she's being mechal her father, and therefore she gets streifa. According to Rabbi Shmuel, we by Nesua she doesn't get shreifa. It's only by Neruso because we learned it from the Memetinu. So what do you see from Esavia Himechalalas? My Dorish Bey. Zok Gemara, he needs it for a new limud. He boiled the lichedetanya. Hayir Abeir Aimer, Matam Adlomer Esavia Himechalalas. It teaches you that Himechalalas, we actually vilify and mock not only a woman who's mizana as a bas kohen, but we vilify and we mock her family as well. We're instructed to do so. We say, cursed is the man who gave birth to this daughter. Cursed is the man who raised this daughter. Cursed is this man who this bad woman came from him. Omer Rabashi, Dr. Rabashi, Kaman Karina and Rishia bar Rishia, Vafilu Rishia bar Tzadika, who holds that you could call somebody a Rasha ben Rasha, even though he's really a Rasha ben Tzaddik, you still call him a Rasha ben Rasha. Kaman Kaitana, that follows the sheet of this Tana, who says that we vilify somebody whose child turns this bad, and we blame it, we curse him for having put out such a product. What a horrific kill this is for a child to do. We should only learn this academically. So the Mishnah ended off with a comment that seemed not relevant to the discussion of the Mishnah, which was about which Misa is more severe. So Frank the Gemara, my Tana, the Katani, Zu mitzvahs on the skull. What did we just learn in our Mishnah that would prompt us to end off with Zu mitzvahs on the skull? Zok Gemara, it's not our direct Mishnah, but it's the Mishnayos that we've just learned in the past about how exactly they did skila. And we were taught that base skila. So we learned the whole process of how they did the skila. And since the very next Mishnah that we're about to learn is going to start telling us how they did the shreifa, so the Tana announced we've just finished explaining the process of skila, and now we're going to move on to the process of shreifa. Mitzvahs hanitzrafin. What they would do is when they're forcing hot lead down someone's throat, he's going to be fighting and shaking, and it's not going to work so well. So they have to somehow fasten him down. So what they would do is they would bury him in some type of mud until his knees. I wonder, does the art scroll Taj Zevel? Zevel literally means manure, dung. Is that what it means, or does it mean like you buried him in the earth down to his knees so he can't move? It sort of immobilizes him. V'noisnin suder kasha the soy haraka. The method that they use to keep his mouth open is they choke him. And by choking him, it's a person's natural instinct is to open his mouth. But the problem is they don't want to cause him any undue pain by choking him. They just want to apply this tourniquet just to be able to force him to open his mouth. Now, normally, if you want a rope that's strong enough to choke somebody, it's got to be a tough rope, which is not really pleasant on the skin. If they use a soft fabric, it'll just tear it. They won't be able to pull it hard enough. So therefore, what they did is the nice and sudar kasha l'soich haraka. So you see, we don't want to cause him a drop of pain more than what's actually prescribed by the Torah. The korach al tzavara, they wrap it around his neck. Zeh moishech etzloi, v'zeh moishech etzloi. You have two people on either side of him pulling it, which obviously slightly chokes him. Acha b'seich es piv, until his mouth is opened. Then umadak es a psila. They take a piece of lead and they heat it up in the fire until it's liquid. V'zarka l'soich piv, and they pour it down his throat. V'yoredes l'soich me'av, it goes into his intestines. V'choimeres es b'nei me'av, and it cooks and vaporizes his b'nei me'av, as Rashi says, loshen chamar meru me'ai, in Eicha, my insides are dissolving. That meant emotionally and figuratively. Here it means literally. Rabbi Yehuda afhu imeis biyadam lehayu mekaymin by mitzvahs sreifa. It's way too dangerous to start choking this guy, because what if he dies by choking? What if they choke him a little more than they were supposed to, and he dies? Now he didn't have mitzvahs sreifa; he ended up having mitzvahs chanek. So I don't like your idea, the method that you use to get his mouth open. Ella. They force his mouth open with some type of tool, some type of tweezer. Against his will, they force his mouth open, and then they do the same thing. There was a story with a bas kohen. She was mezana, and they didn't burn her with lead. They literally put her into a fire. They burnt her at the stake. They surrounded her with stalks of straw, which were easily combustible. And they literally burnt her. So you see that you got your version wrong of what Mr. Shreif is. Abullah told her, no, you're making a mistake. That Bezdin didn't know what they were doing. They thought Shreifa literally meant Shreifa. They didn't know that the proper way to do Shreifa is with lead. My psila, what exactly is this psila of lead that we're talking about? No, it doesn't say lead. I touched this lead. So Gemara wants to know, what is this psila? Amar Masna, it's a psila shel aver, it's a stick of lead. Minole, how do we know that's what it means? Asya, so minole, the question is not how do I know that it's lead. How do I know the chihai gavna sreifa the kamer rachmona? How do you know that you don't just burn the person? Why doesn't sreifa? Why isn't it translated literally? It's burning the person. How do you know it's burning their insides, but their outside looks undamaged? We know it. So osya sreifa may adas kayer. We learn sreifa from adas kayer. So it says by the adas kayer, by the bas kayer says. So that's the shreifa by us. And the shreifa by das korach is, it says it's machlois achatoimo elo b'nafshoisam v'asoisam yikui pachem tzipel mizbeach. Oh no, that's not that. That's not that pasuk. It's a different pasuk, but it's also right there by Midbar Yuzayin. Let me bring the pasuk up. The Midbar Yud Zayin. Midbar Yud Zayin. It says over here. It says over here. This is the 250 people took their machlos and they all died. Let's see over here. Vayasu v'osu oisam rikue fachem and sipui la mizbeach Ki krivu lefnei Hashem vayikdoshu. Then it says vayikach Elazar hakon yismachos and achoshish krivu haserufim vayirakim tibul mizbeach. So it says Sreifa by the Adas Korach, by those who were makriv the Eish Zara, the 250 rebellers who brought the Macht of Keteris. So also Sreifa by Adas Korach. Mala halon, just like by Korach, it was Sreifas Neshama v'guf kaim. Their insides got burned, but their guf was intact. And the Gemara is going to shortly ask, how do you know that's what happened by Korach? It doesn't say it was just Rufim. How do you know what it meant over there? Af kan, so too, what it meant to Sreifa Neshama v'guf kaim. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Asher Sreifa Mibnei Aaron. We learned this from Nadav Vaviu. Mal alon, Sreifas Neshama v'guf kaim. By Nadav and Avihu, it was the Sreifas Neshama, but the guf was kaim. Just the inside got burnt, but their exterior was fine. Afghan Sreifas Neshama v'guf kaim. For fact, the Gemara, Man di Yalaf me Adas Korach. The person who learns it from the Adas Korach, Minalei. How does he know gufa that by the Adas Korach the guf was kaim? The Chsiv, it says in the pasuk, "Besmaklos hachatama ela b'nav shoysa." The maklos of those people who died b'nav shoysa. Rashi teaches b'nav shoysam v'loy begufa. So you see, it's their nefesh that was killed, not their guf. So, in other words, on the outside they looked fine, but their insides were burnt up. Shenishmosam nisrefes the guf kayim. That's how we know that by the Adas Korach their bodies weren't burnt; it was only burnt from the inside. The idich, and the Mandavar who learns this from the Bnei Aaron, he's going to say you can't learn from the Bnei Korach. You know why? Because ahi sreifa mamashi. It means that they were literally burnt. Don't say that the Adas Korach they just got burnt on the inside; they were totally burnt up and consumed. So what does it mean? Umay binaf shoysam. It's much where only their nefesh was killed. No, it means their whole body got burnt, but it got burnt. Shenischavu shreifal iskei naf shoysam. Naf shoysam is the thing that they did wrong. Why they were deserving of this misa. It says in the pasuk bechanfei lag moig, because of the chanifa of good food. Charak alai shinemai. The Sultan is scratching his teeth together, excited to get his hands on me to punish me, and we learn that it's referring to the Adas Korach b'shvil chanufa she'echnifu lekorach al iskei legima charak alei and sar shal gehenim. You know how Korach attracted all of his followers? They were a cheap date. All he had to do was he offered them. He made a big meal. He made a big suda. Made a big party, and everybody came to the party. No, that won them over to follow him in his pursuit that led to disaster. So you see that it's Ishkin of Shosham. They wanted to fill their bellies. They wanted to indulge a little bit. It's that dragged them down. So that's what it means. But meanwhile, they were completely consumed. So the Gemara is going to ask soon. So let's say that's what it means by the Adas Korach. Let's say it means they're completely burned. So learn that from Korach. That's not a reason not to learn from Korach. You can't first decide what it means and then pick who you're going to learn from to correspond with how you learned. If that's where the evidence takes you, learn it from Korach. So learn it from Korach, let's rather you get burnt as well. So the Gemara is going to deal with that later on.
1 minute. Did he say made a Suda?
Yeah.
Like, what can you serve at that? Like more mun? I mean, what did they have already?
Let's see, Rashi. So you asked me what was on the menu.
Yeah. Okay, maybe and they were, according to Chazal, they can only eat from carbonas as well, the meat. And
right, they weren't allowed to eat meat in those days.
Yeah, Slav they had already.
Mm-hmm.
So what was served at that Suda that they were so impressed?
That's a good point. But doesn't, and also how could Korach have had enough mun for everybody?
That's right.
They got their own one. What exactly?
Absolutely. Whatever you brought in, it was, was like Gogolas. It was only for enough for those people.
That's a good order. I wonder. Now I'm really intrigued what he served.
Okay.
It's a good order, right? What could he serve? What's that? Oh, there's entertainment. Okay. Maybe a dancer's popping out of cakes. Okay. Zok to Gemara. Sashal Gerem Shinov. Dr. Mandios Bnei Aaron, Minole, how does he know as well that it was just they got burnt, Nadav and Avihu got burnt from the inside, but their bodies were intact? Tichsiv Vayemusu Lefnei Hashem Ke'en Misa. What does it say by Nadav Avihu? It says Vateiche Eish Lefnei Hashem V'toichel Oisam. So that talks about that they were killed. But then it adds Vayemusu Lefnei Hashem. It looked like it was a regular Misa. It looked like a natural death. Meaning, even though they were burnt, it was only on the inside. And the Mandam who holds that you don't learn it out of Nadav and Avihu, you learn from Adas Choyach, they learned that by Nadav and Avihu, they were completely burned. What does it mean by Yamusu? It means the Ischel Behu Migavoy Ken Misa. Originally, as they were dying, it didn't damage their body on the outside. So it looked like it was natural death. But as the fire continued, their bodies were completely burnt up. The time we learned, Abba Yosy ben Destoy Omer, Shnei Chuten Shalesh Yotzu Mebeis Kodesh HaKadoshim. 2 little strings of fire came out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Nachle Kula Arba, and it split into 4, 1 per nostril. The Nifnsu Shnayim Bechait Moshel Zeh, Ushnayim Bechait Moshel Zeh V'Sarf. Frank the Gemara, why are you learning either from Nadav and Avihu or from the Adas Korach? There's another place to learn it from. V'aksiv v'taychel oisam, v'aksiv v'taychel oisam, oisam. Oh no, forget. I'm making a mistake. This is a different kasha. V'aksiv v'taychel oisam. How could you tell me that they were all eaten up? It says v'taychel oisam, which is a midrash says, which mashma part of them didn't get eaten up. So it can't be that they got completely burnt. Because Vataychel Oisam indicates that only part of them got burnt. So you're right. You know what didn't get burnt? Oisam v'loy bigdayim. But their full bodies did get burnt. So the Madam learns from Adas Korach learns that by Nadav and Avihu, their full bodies got burnt, only their begodim were spared. Frank the Gemara, there's another place where we could have learned this from. The Nelach mi parim hanesrafim, from the parim that get burnt on the Mizbeach, or that get burnt mechutz lamachana. Ma'ala halon, sreifa mamish. Just like by burning the parim, shreifa means literally burning, consumed to ashes. Afghan shreifa mamish, who said the shreifa means this special type of shreifa of putting the lead down? Maybe it also means like what it means by this parim on this rafim. So it's more mistaver to learn it from the death of a person for 4 reasons. Adam means you learn the halacha about how to kill a person from the halacha of a person dying, not from a beheva. In either case, someone who is getting shreifa did an affair, not an aviv did an affair, and the others korach did an affair. The parliament Rabban didn't do an affair. It's actually a tikkun. Nishama, in all of our cases, it's a person who was alive that died because of this shreifa. By the parliament Rabban, we're talking about burning an already dead animal, and pigel. The animal could be subject to pigel. They're karbanos, but none of these people can be subject to pigel. They're not karbanos. They're humans. Adrab is Gemara. There are ways in which the Misa Shreifa is more comparable to Param Anisrafin. Adrab and Param Anisrafin Havel Lamelav Shekein Machshir L'Doirais. First of all, Machshir, you're doing something that you're supposed to be doing, like in the Mitzvah Shreifa, you're supposed to be doing this to the person, but by Nadav and Avihu, that was something that shouldn't have been done, and by the Adas Korach, that's something that shouldn't have been done. And L'Doirais, the Mitzvah Shreifa is relevant. L'Doirais. The Mitzvah Shreifa is something that doesn't have to carry out throughout the ages, just like the Param Anisrafin. But Nadav and Avihu was a one-shot deal, and the Adas Korach was a one-shot deal. Zoktamar Hanach Nefishin. There's more similarities to Nadav and Avihu, or to the Adas Korach, and that's why we learned it from there. That Shreifa doesn't literally mean burning up the body; it means burning it from the inside. Frank the Gemara, Mandi Yalef Me'adas Korach, my time Alo Yalef Mibnei Aaron. So now let's ask the other way around. The Mandam learned from Adas Korach. Why didn't he learn it from Nadav and Avihu? So tomorrow, because Ahu Shreifa Mamashava, he learns it was a real Shreifa. So Frank the Gemara, let's say that's the case. Let's say by Nadav and Avihu, their bodies got burnt up completely. Still, learn Shreifa from Nadav and Avihu, and say that by Shreifa also you burn the body. V'neilef mina. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Bar Avua, Amar Kra. It says you have to l'reacha kamoicha. You have to like your friend like you like yourself. Who would want to be burnt to a crisp? Barar loy misa yofa. Pick for him a nice misa, So the way we do mitzvah shreifa is a much kinder way to burn somebody than it would be to burn a mistake. So frag the Gemara, v'chimei acher de'ika Rav Nachman. So if you have the svara of Bram Misa Yofa, so why did we need Gzer Shava from Abbas Koyach? Why did we need Gzer Shava to Nadav Naviu? You have your overarching svara of do a nice Misa. Gzer Shava Lomali. Zaktamar, because he loved Gzer Shava, Havamina, Sreifas Neshama, V'guv Kaim, Loi Sreifa Hiklal. If I didn't have the Torah telling me that this would qualify as a Sreifa, but the question is, who said use this method of Sreifa? Maybe use the other method of Sreifa. For that, I'll use a Nachman Svara. But first, you have to qualify that hot lead even counts as Sreifa. It might not even count as Sreifa at all, because it's not the Pasha the Pshat at all. It's lofish lo chavilas mirs. If Sreifa meant literal Sreifa, then the only way you could be Mekayim v'haftarech kamoicha is to make sure that the body burns quickly. So it happens more quickly and the pain doesn't last so long. That we have a Gzer Shava to tell you that you could compare it to a case where there wasn't literally burning a body. Rather, what it was doing is burning it from the inside. And once we know that qualifies as a method of Sreifa, that's the method that's preferred because of the Haftalarech Kamecha, Borloi Misaya. Now, it says Kehechid Lisref La'agel. La'agel means you should burn quickly. Where does La'agel mean quickly? So I think it's like in Kaddish, Ba'agalu B'zman Karev. That's probably where the word comes from. Kamash Malon, that the Misa Sreifa is with lead. Ukfar Hayu Moshe v'Aharon Mahalchen B'derech. This is a very famous story. Moshe and Aaron were walking down the street. And Rashi tells us, what's this doing here? The Gemara shares the story with us over here. Lashminon, to teach us the B'shvil Shoyim Avakshin Sarora of Rabbanus Mesu. Why did Nadav and Avihu die? Because they were seeking power. Now, this is not consistent with the epic pshat of simply pshat in what happened by Nadav and Avihu. In simply pshat, the Mechaber's Masber, that it's to the contrary, they wanted to be Malamet Chus on Aaron. They wanted to protect Aaron from the Misa that he might have been deserving of due to his involvement in the Egel. So they almost, as David spoke out, that here's a Rashi that tells us what they did wrong, but there's so many other Midrashim that has so many things that they did wrong. So he wants to tell you they did everything wrong. They were trying to do everything wrong to bring the Misa upon themselves so that they should be Mechaper for Aharon and he should have a Kapara. So they were walking down the street.
Thanks for the plug.
Okay, I'm happy that I said it over accurately.
Pretty much.
Mahalchan Acharein. So they were walking behind Moshe and Aaron. The Chol Yisrael Acharein, and everybody else was following them. Amalei Nadav Laviu. Nadav told Avihu, one of these two Altich is going to die, so we can take over. We'll run this place like a tough ship. We'll run it efficiently. So HaKadosh Baruch said, "Oh, you're looking to get rid of the last Torah?" Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hanira Mikai Beresmi. Let's see who survives who. And of course, Moshe and Aaron survived them. Amar Papa, Hani Amar Inchi. Nefishi Gambli Sabi de Teini Mashchi Dogni. There's a lot of old camels who carry the hide of the new camels who died early. Amar Rebbe reading on Talmud Beis. Lama Talmud Chacham Doim Lefnei Am Haaretz. When the Talmud Chacham is perceived by the Am Haaretz, how does the Am Haaretz perceive the Talmud Chacham? Zok to Gemara B'tchila, at the beginning he's like very he's very in awe from the Talmud Chacham. They look at the Talmud Chacham like he's a jug of gold, very intimidating. But once there's a conversation, so that scare, that awe diminishes, and now he's doimel lakis and shokesef. But if the Talmud Chacham has a no from the Am Haaretz, now the Am Haaretz completely loses his respect for the Talmud Chacham. Doimel lakita and shel cheres. Even shenishbar, once it's broken, shovein loitakana. I guess what it means is reputations are like crystal, very expensive to get, but impossible to replace. Once the Am Haaretz loses his honest respect for the Talmud Chacham, it doesn't come back so quickly. Zok to Gemara, Imrisha Bas Teli. That was her name. She was a Baskoin, she's in Sahavli. She was a Baskoin, and she was Mizana. She was a candidate for Shreifa. So how did they carry out this Misa Sreifa? Akvar Rav Chama Bar Tovia Chaviles Muris for Sarfa. He burned her the wrong the way the Mishnah says, Rebbe Lazar quotes, that they said that was not the right way. So Omer Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef corrected Reb Chama Bar Tovia. Ta B'tarti made two mistakes. First of all, Ta B'dir Rav Masna, you made a mistake because you forgot Rav Masna's halacha. The Amar Le'il, Shreifas Bezin is a psila shel Evrahi, and you just burnt her. And V'ta B'ditanya. It says, Uvasa l'kayhanim halavim v'lashoyvet asher yeh b'yom mahem. You only pass in dinei nefashis when there's kayhanim doing avoid in the Beis Hamikdash. Bizman sheyesh kohen, yesh mishpat. Bizman she'ein kohen, ein mishpat. And therefore you had no right to kill her at all. And even that you did kill her, you did not do the mitzvah of shreifa properly. Amr Rabbi Lozer Rabbi Tadik Ma'aseh b'bas kohen shezinsa. Amr Rabbi Yosef, Bezdin shel Tzedokin Hava. It was a Bezdin of Tzedokin who did it. So they don't darshan different chazal. They take everything in the Torah literally, so that's why they burnt her at the stake. Hachi Amrlu, Hachi Hadralu. I'm sorry? Yeah, they sure. They have communities now. Huh? So frankly, is this really what happened? Hachi Amar Lahu, Hachi Hadralu. This exchange occurred exactly as reported in the Mishnah, where Rabbi Lozer said this happened, and they said, well, the Bezdin must have made a mistake, because we have a different version of a similar exchange. But Tanya, Amr Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Tzadok Zechrani, I remember, when I used to be a young child riding on my father's shoulders, and they brought a bas kohen shezinsa, and I remember as a little boy, I saw what they did to her.
R-rated movie?
No, it could be what happened was his father was on the Bezdin, so he hung out with his father.
Bring a child to work
He was bring a child to work there, that's right. Amr Loi, so they didn't respond to him that the Bezdin was Bezdin Tayin. You know what they responded to him? Amr Loi Katna Yisa. What are you talking about? You're telling me what you remember happened when you were a baby. Who says you even remember what happened accurately? So that's how the story went down. Both these stories happened. Both these conversations happened. So it's not a stira. So which story happened first? If the first story happened where they told him it was Bezdin Toyin, so it doesn't make sense. The first story that Rabbi Lozer told him was when he was an adult. Here, Rabbi Lozer has already told a story that he remembered that happened when he was an adult. Yet they still made away with that story because they said it was Bezdin Tayin, right? So so what was he going to think that if he says over his story again, but this time recollecting a story from when he was a little boy, that's going to impress them more? That's worse. Doesn't make sense. First, he said over the story that he remembered as a little child, and that they made away by telling him, and then he said, you know what? I remember such a story when I was an adult as well. And then Varmuleh told him, even so, it's not a raya. They were probably a Bezdin Shel Tzedek. Mitzvahs haneherogin. So now we're talking about herek. So we discussed Shreifa, now we're on to herek. Mitzvahs haneherogin. How do they do herek? Rashi says the person was standing and they just chopped his head off in one fell swoop with a sword, just like the Malchus would do. It's not a nice way to do it with someone standing up. They put his head on some type of chopping block, and they would chop him from behind with an axe. They told him, that you call better? That's even worse. So it seems like there's a discussion as to exactly how herek was done. I will agree that it's not such a beautiful type of misa. What should I do? We can't do it the way of the goy because it says so we are forced to do it this way, even though this way seems to be even less pleasant. Rabbanon, who are saying that they kill it like a goy, they kill him like a goy. Zogt the Rabbanon, that's not we're not copying them. Even the chsiv saif boy raisa. Let me now go gamrinam. We're not learning from the goyim. We're doing what the Torah says. Boom, they do the same thing. That doesn't mean we can't do it. The loyte mahachi, if you're not going to learn like that, hadatanya sarfin al hamalachim. The halacha is that after a king dies, we don't want his possessions to be used by anybody else, so we burn all of his possessions. But the goyish kings do that as well. V'loy midarkei ha'emori. It's not midarkei ha'emori. Frek Gemara, why not? Hechi sarfinon. V'achsiv v'vuchu yisay moisei lechu. Ella, even the chsiv streifa b'araisa, since we find it mentioned in the Novi to tell us that's what they did for the Malachim, Malchi Yisrael and the Malchi Yehuda. That's not v'vuchu yisay moisei lechu. The chsiv v'misrafes avicha. We just had this puzzle a couple of days ago, talking about Tzidkiyahu was told by the Novi that he's going to be treated like a king and they're going to burn his possessions also. He's going to die with honor. So therefore, we're not learning it from the Goyim. We're learning it from the Torah. V'achanami. So too in our case, given the Saif Boiraisa, since it's a Saif Boiraisa, even if we kill them in the same way that the Goyim do, it doesn't matter. We're doing it because of a state in Torah. That's not a Vuch Yisayim. What about something that we learned in the next parak? It says, Elu hein hana herogim. The following people get killed. Haritzeach gets killed with hereg. Ba'anche ir hanidachas, they get hereg. Bishlam ir hanidachas, I understand ir hanidachas gets hereg. Ksibu lefichara. So we know that they're killed with a sayid. Well, it doesn't say beferish in the Torah that a ritzech gets hereg. So how do we know that a ritzech gets hereg? Minolan, Tanya we learned. It says nokaim yinokaim. This is what it says regarding a ritzech. We look up the pasuk. It says v'chiyak ishus avdoi aimosoi b'shevet umeis tachashadei nokaim yinokaim. Is talking about an Eved Kanani who's mechuyev in mitzvahs. So someone's mechuyev misa if he kills. Nikimazu. This nikima that applies to someone who kills an Eved. Mahu. I don't know exactly what type of misa it is. Kishahu omer ve'vesi aleichem cherev noikemes nekam beris. So there it talks about a cherev already. This is in the Vayikra. Vayisi aleichem cherev nekemis kambaris v'nesavtem el arechem v'shilachti dever b'soichem. It's a klala to Israel. Havoimer nekima zusayif. When the Torah uses lashon nekima, it's referring to a hereg. So that's how I would know that a ritzech gets hereg. Vaymer the boris lay mivras. Maybe what they do is they just stab him. Who said they cut his head off? We know it's done with a cherev. But how do you know what's done with the cherev? Maybe they just stab him in his neck or in his stomach. Zot Gemara, lefi cherev ksiv. It says lefi cherev. Lefi cherev is mashma that the cherev splits him in half, the two halves. So it's not just stabbing him; it's slicing something off like his head. Maybe you cut him with a sword lengthwise. You cut him, you split him in half that way. Amar Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, for that, Amar Kraba Haftar Akamecha, Roy Loy Misa Yafa. That's not such a nice Misa. So Dr. Ashkhan the Kotal Avda, we found the pasuk of Yinokim when someone kills an Eved Kanaini that he gets herod. But Bar Chor Minale, how do we know that a regular Ritzach who kills a regular Yid, how do we know that he gets the Mises herod? Zok to Gemara, Velav Kal V'Chomeru, shouldn't be a Kal V'Chomer. Kotal Avda B'Sayif, Bar Chorin Bechenek, you can't learn it. You can't learn it from a Kal V'Chomer because maybe killing with killing a Ben Chorin should only get Chenek. So Zok to Gemara, Hanicha Leman Omar. Now, why would you say Chenek? Why Chenek? Because Chenek is the default Misa for any time the Torah mentions someone gets killed and doesn't say what the Misa is. By default, it always means Chenek. So Zok to Hanicha Leman Omar Chenek Kal. If Chenek is Kal, then you can ask the Kal V'Chomer. You know, if someone kills an Eved, he gets Hereg, he should get a lower Misa, he should get Chenek for killing a Ben Chorin, so then you have a good argument. But what about Reb Shimon, who Chenek is more Chomer, Michael Meimer? Maybe in fact, a regular Ritzach who kills a regular Ben Yisrael, maybe he should get Chenek. Zok Gemara Nafkalei Miditanya. We have a limud. It says V'ata Tevayer Hadam Hanoki Mikrabech. The pasuk says V'ata Tevayer Hadam Hanoki Mikrabech Kisas HaYoshar Beinei Hashem. So Hukshu Kol Shoyv Chedomim LeEgla Rufa. This pasuk is by Egla Rufa, and we're comparing all of the murder cases to how we treat an Egla Rufa. Ma Lalon B'Sayif. Just like by the Egla Rufa, we chop off the Egla Rufa's head. uminatzavar, and it's from the neck. Afkan b'sayif uminatzavar. So for Gemara, if that's how you're learning all Ritzicha from, so why don't you learn it to be done precisely as the Egla Rufa is done? Imal alam b'kupet b'mul orev, afkan b'kupet b'mul orev. Who said you chop off his head nicely and smoothly with a sword? Maybe you chop him from the back with an axe, which is the less nice misa. For that already we can use to say don't do it exactly like the Egla Rufa, do it with a knife. Zok to more weiter. Chenek, how does chenek work? Mitzvahs hanechnokin. We're on a murder spree today. Mitzvahs hanechnokin hoyu mishakin oisay bezevel arakavoy. So if they use the same restraint system, the noise and suder kachal osoich arak, again, we don't want to cause them a drop more discomfort than necessary. The korach al tzavari ze moishich etzloi, ze moishich etzloi ad shenafse yoytzeis, until the person passes. Tanu rabbanim, ish prat lekotin. Tis ish asher yinaf es eshes ish asher yinaf es eshes re'eyu moish yomus. If in the office, and that's referring to mitzvahs misas chenek. So it says ish prat lekot, mean a minor that does znus doesn't get misa. Asher yinaf es eshes ish prat le'eshes kotten. If this woman does not have a kedushin from an adult male, she's not considered an eshes ish, and you don't get killed for being mizana with her. Eshes re'eyu prat le'eshes acher. Rashi says, who's a chayim referring to? A kuti or a goy who doesn't have tvisas kedushin, that's not considered an eshes ish. Moish yumas, what type of mis is it? It's bechenek. Ataymer bechenek, oy einoy ella ba'achas mikol misas hamuris b'toyer. Chenek is never mentioned beferish in the Torah, but skila sreif on hereg is maybe what the Torah means by moish yumas for a noyef, that it's one of those three misas. Arbet kol mokim shenemar misa b'toyer stam. If you don't know what misa means, you don't have no right to suggest a more severe misa. You have to suggest the least severe misa, which means, as Rashi says, El Hakale will come on in just a moment. On Amud Aleph, the Gemara is going to teach us mifarish the arba misas kesidrin Gemara Garmerlu, even though it's not mufurish in the Torah chenek. But we have a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that there is these four misas. Gomer lehu Rabbi Yosy misinai. Rabbi Yosy learns that all four misas are misinai. The chivin the chenek kala mikulam. Since we're working under the premise that chenek is the least severe of all the misas, al kolachach nitna l'chayv misas hastumin. Clearly, that's what we must give to everybody. Where the Torah just says moish shumas and doesn't specify what misa, it has to be the least severe of the bunch, which is chenek. What right do you have to apply a more chomer to kamisa? So you give him the least stringent misa. Rabbi Yosy not because chenek is the lightest, because we're going to soon see Rabbi Yosy might hold like Rabbi Shimon that chenek might be more severe than herod. We happen to know that it is chenek. Now, how do you know that it's chenek? Rabbi tells us how Rabbi Yosy knows that stam misa means chenek. Rabbi Yomer never misa b'dei shemayim. It says misa b'dei shemayim. It says vayomas kamoisa, which is by air and oinen. But never misa b'dei adam. And the Torah talks about misa b'dei adam by let's say by noyef in the office. Ma misa amur b'dei shemayim is misa she'ein b'roishim. It's a misa that doesn't leave a mark. As Rashi says, ein b'chabur v'simin. So af misa hamur b'dei adam. So too, when the Torah just says moish yamos, it means a misa without a roishim, such as chenek. Misa shein b'roishim. Maybe it means misa streifa. So it can be misa streifa. Midaber rachman the baskoyin b'streifa. The Torah says that a regular noyev gets regular misa, and the baskoyin is taken out of the cloud to upgrade him to streifa. It must mean only a baskoyin gets streifa, but a regular noyev doesn't. Mechlal daha la bas streifa. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we're right on the daf, and Bezhem tomorrow we're going to learn daf nun.